Society Impact Scholar and Distinguished Professor in the Humanities. She serves as a country conditions expert for asylum cases, was a founder of the Westside Leadership Institute, and works as an organizer with the Salt Lake City Latinx community. She previously served as chair of the Gender Studies Division from 2010 through 2020. I will now hand it over to Dr. Porter.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for attending this event. I'm just going to make a couple of opening remarks about the Center for Latin American Studies and the nature of the collaboration with the Mexican Consulate here in Salt Lake City. The Center for Latin American Studies is a Title VI National Resource Center and convenes and supports Latin American-related teaching, research, and community outreach here in Utah and the region and also nationally. In partnership with BYU, the University of Utah Center for Latin American Studies recently received a renewed commitment from the federal government in the form of designation as a National Resource Center. This is, in fact, our third time being recognized as such, so it dates back about 8 years now. Along with our partners in the Asia Center, also at the University of Utah, as a National Resource Center, we received together $4.5 million in funding for student scholarships, for example. One of those scholarships is the Foreign Language and Area Studies scholarships, which provide more than $600,000 a year for the next 4 years for undergraduate and graduate students at the University of Utah and BYU from all disciplines to study less commonly taught languages of Latin America and Asia. Among those are Portuguese and an important language for Mexico, Nahuatl. The funds typically cover full tuition plus a stipend and help ensure broader access to the university regardless of students' financial need. And I mention this in case you're interested in this area of study, and we've left some materials in the lobby area where you sign up for having attended this event. So if you're interested, check it out. With over 87 faculty members across 37 departments and 18 colleges here at the University of Utah, the Center for Latin American Studies has strengths in the study of Brazil, tropical biology, indigenous studies of the Americas, Mexico, and the Latinx diaspora. The program offers a major and minor, a graduate certificate, and a master's degree. The centers partner with a network of schools and community organizations in the state, including BYU, Salt Lake Community College, UVU, the Utah State Office of Education, and community organizations like Westside Pathways and Artes de Mexico in Utah to promote education and research on Latin America. We're part of, one of the things that we have here in Utah that's very special is that Utah leads the nation in K-12 dual language and immersion programs. Currently, there are more than 45,000 dual language K-12 students in 265 schools across the country, across the state, and the largest enrollments are in Spanish and Spanish language. The Center for Latin American Studies also works to recruit underrepresented groups to international education and language learning. Some of our efforts include an initiative called Read You, which is an early reading program that opens space for families to have conversations about the experience of immigration and confronting racism. We support pipeline programs with Salt Lake Community College, a Spanish language dorm on campus, and Spanish and language Portuguese course offerings on campus. In addition to language study, you can take a section in history or sociology or economics in Spanish, in Portuguese, and in other languages. The University of Utah, finally, also hosts the country's most robust Nahuatl language program in the country. As I mentioned, Nahuatl is an important language for Mexico, and we're proud to support the study of Nahuatl here at the University of Utah. For the Center of Latin American Studies on campus, the Mexican Consulate in Salt Lake City is one of our most valuable partners. Our collaborations have included campus community talks about the shared history of Uto-Aztecan languages, teacher workshops and curriculum development on the Mexican period of Utah history, and cross-cultural discussions of women's movements to address sexual harassment in the workplace, reproductive justice, and cultural preservation. Today, we are gathered to celebrate yet another collaboration, that of the anniversary of the founding of the Mexican Consulate here in Salt Lake City. In reflecting on this history, we have to begin by acknowledging that the land we stand on, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. The University of Utah recognizes and respects the enduring relationships that exist between many indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government, and affirm the University of Utah's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities. As you might know, the Spanish explored and colonized these lands in the late 18th century, most notably with the 1776 expedition led by Silvestre Vélez de Escalante and Francisco Atanasio Dominguez. The expedition aimed to find a route that connected Monterrey, which is the capital of the state of what is now Nuevo León in Mexico, with Santa Fe in what is now the United States state of New Mexico. That expedition also had the goal to try and convert Ute peoples to Christianity. After Mexico declared independence from Spain in 1810, the area became officially a part of Mexican territory. In 1847, with the arrival of trappers, miners, and people associated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the territory then became populated by yet another population. And it was all a part of a broader movement of westward expansion of the United States and colonization of what was first Spanish and then Mexican territory. With the Mexican-American War in 1846 to 1848, we then have the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo that was signed in 1848. The Hispanic and mostly Mexican presence in Utah at the end of the 19th century played an instrumental role in the development of this state in the industries of cattle, sheep, mining, and irrigation systems. And the demographic presence of Mexicans in Utah has grown from this period. So in 1910, the census reported that just under 200 people lived in Utah, and that number continued to grow. In the 1990s alone, the Latinx population of Utah grew by 138%. The Utah state government focused on tourism in particular in towns like Park City and Wendover and other states, as well as the expansion of housing in Utah, caused a surge of new jobs that attracted Hispanic population from Mexico and from other states in the country, so that now more people call of the Hispanic population call Utah home. In the last 2 decades, the number of immigrants from Latin America has continued to increase at a rate of about 200%, among the most rapid growth in the nation. Today, Salt Lake City is nearly 22% Hispanic. West Valley City, if I have it correct, is 40% Hispanic. And according to the, even back in 2010, the census ranked Utah as 11th in the United States for Latinx growth. So Mexico and Utah share a history that is as long as it is deeply intertwined. It is a history that we talk about because it is important to acknowledge the long-term and standing relationship between, or intertwined relationship between Mexico and Utah, but also because of the importance of that relationship today. From its earliest history, the Mexican Consulate has made a vital contribution to the well-being of those communities, of Mexican, Utah, and where we all share our lives. The early history of the consulate included many things, among them protecting the rights of American citizens' economic investment in Mexico. This included land ownership and businesses in Mexico held by US citizens. The consulate also facilitated the arrival of Mexicans to Utah to work in the mines, in the construction industry, and in the cultivation of sugar beets. The consulate has played an important role over this more than 100 years of protecting the legal rights of Mexican workers living, Mexicans working and living in the region when Utah businesses sometimes took advantage of those workers and their families. So the current history of predatory practices vis-a-vis immigrants that we see today is one that also has a long history in the state. The consulate also has a long history of contributing to the physical well-being of our community through connecting individuals to healthcare, opening up culturally appropriate spaces for connecting people to access healthcare, and simply providing information in Spanish language so that people know of the resources available to them. So in sum, the well-being of our community depends to a great degree on this important labor that the Mexican consulate plays in Salt Lake City, in Utah, and the region. One of the current projects that we're celebrating today, and with this I'll close, is a history of the Mexican consulate in Salt Lake City. This has been a very exciting academic collaboration. It has opened up opportunities for students from the University of Utah to conduct research in collaboration with students at the National Autonomous University in Mexico City. It's opened up opportunities for publications for students, for conversation about cross-cultural conversations about history. How do you understand the history of the United States? How do you understand the history of Mexico? These are very valuable professional skills, but I also just want to say that they're important personal opportunities for personal growth and learning. And these opportunities would not be possible without the collaboration of the Mexican consulate, of the connections that they provide, of their awareness of the importance of supporting these kinds of conversations. And on behalf of the University of Utah, I just want to say that we're very grateful for the work that you have done in this regard. So without further ado, then, I would like to introduce our first speaker in this event of 110 years of Mexico in Utah. I will introduce Consul Jose Vicente Borjon, who is the head consul at the Consulate of Mexico in Salt Lake City. So let me just give you a little bit of his incredibly distinguished career here. He is a member of the Mexican Foreign Service with the rank of minister. Since 2017, he served as the head consul of Mexico in Salt Lake City, Utah, and is also responsible for the region of Western Wyoming. At the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, he has been Deputy Director for Ceremonial Issues, Deputy Director General for the Southern Border, and advisor to the Undersecretary for Latin America and the Caribbean. He served at the Embassy of Mexico in the United States, as head of Hispanic Affairs, the Hispanic Affairs Office, and was consul for community affairs at the Consulate General of Mexico in Houston. He served as attaché for scientific cooperation and scientific culture at the Embassy of Mexico in Korea as well. His degrees come from UNAM, from the National Autonomous University of Mexico in International Relations, as well as a master's in diplomatic studies from the Diplomatic Academy of Mexico and a master's in European studies from the Ortega y Gasset Institute in Spain. He has published for the Mexican Foreign Policy magazine, in particular, an article, Opportunities for Linking with Youth of Mexican Origin in the United States, and he is also a co-author on the book that we're working on currently on the history of the Consulate of Mexico in Salt Lake City. So it is a great honor to have him here with us, and please join me in welcoming Consul Borjon.
Well, thank you, Dr. Porter, and it's a real pleasure and an honor and opportunity to be here with you and really share what we've been working as a team with the National University, with the Center for Latin American Studies on on the history of the consulate. But why do a history of a consulate would be the first question. And I would say that my interest as a consul was really to learn more about us, and I would say us, the Mexicans who are living in Utah, and also learn more about Utah, because what brought us here? That would be the first question. And to this, I want to acknowledge how important have been many of the things that have been published. So that's why it's so valuable for me. And I respect Armando Solórzano and his books, which really kind of opened me this I would say interest on saying, well, okay, we've been here for so long, but what about us? I mean, what about me? What about the office I represent? What does that? Um, I don't know how it goes here. Let me go. Don't worry, I can do this here. No problem. You know, why establish a consulate in Utah if we are very cold? We would say there were really not enough Mexicans for putting an office. By the way, welcome to former Mexican territory and Utah. But as was said, this was part of the original the territory of Mexico once we as a country became independent. Obviously, this was lost. But it is in the 20th century that we are seeing more Mexicans come here to work in the growing industry of Utah in the areas that Dr. Porter has said. So the question to me has always been, yes, there were coming a group of Mexicans here to the state. They were obviously needing support from exploitation, labor abuses, whatever was happening in those times, especially with immigrants and people who were coming to work in so different and difficult industries such as railroads, the minings, and the agriculture, especially in the beets and sugar beet area. But why here? I mean, you can, if you know of Mexican migration flows, obviously Texas, California, what was former Arizona, New Mexico, we've historically had a number of presence. Mexicans, as I said, the border didn't move to the U.S. The border changed, and those Mexicans who were in the region of Texas became U.S. citizens. Some actually returned because of the love for Mexico. But why Utah? That has been what has motivated us to go a little bit deeper and understanding, and that way also learn who were those people that were here establishing an office. Remember, and this is just a consulate is different than an embassy. An embassy is always and only in the capital of a country for political relations, bilateral relations, while a consulate can be in any place of a country with the main objective of protecting the interests and the well-being of the Mexican, in this case, a Mexican consulate. But hey, you've got U.S. consulates in Mexico, around 11, and they're doing the same work. But a consulate is here to protect the interests of those Mexicans living here in their everyday activities. So why a consulate? And I think, and this is the beauty of the project we've been doing, and how it's also an open invitation to continue and engage students, as has been the case also here in the university. I think that by going to the sources, we can find a better understanding. And we've been working with our historical archive in Mexico, and through the partnership with UNAM and Dr. Aparicio, and she's going to share a little bit about the organization called Orban and the young persons who are really been going in the archives and partnering with our historical archive, being able to find, the original documents that show us, well, what happened. And what we've learned so far, and it's really the interest, is that it was actually a Utah governor who formally asked the Mexican government to open a consulate here. So let's just jump back and say, wow, Utah governor, what's his interest? He loved so much the Mexicans, he sent this letter. No, remember also, as the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints established themselves in this territory, one of their first interests is to expand the presence. So they say to all, hey, tell people to come over, but also expand their faith. So one of the first missions are also to Mexico. And they start establishing themselves in Mexico. And as they establish, they obviously have interests. Like, hey, we're going to buy land for establishing ourselves. We need to buy offices, buildings. And obviously, it is a challenge if you don't have some representation of the government of Mexico to help you out in some of the paperwork. So it's actually, and I'm sharing this original document on the screen, a letter from the Governor William Spry to first the Secretary of State. Remember, federal relations are done, international are done at a federal level, not a state level. So the governor asks the Department of State to request to the government of Mexico to have an established office. And as I said, most of the reasons is that, yeah, there was already a Phoenix consul in the area, but it was not practical for the purposes. And that's how interesting, because you see it's a two-way street. It's also the interest of the authorities, of the people who were established here in Utah, and of course of the Mexican national. This letter would be responded by the Mexican ambassador, and he it was interesting because the Mexican ambassador would later become provisional president in Mexico. And why? Because what is happening at this time is the Mexican Revolution, a transformation period in our country that really changed socially and economically, and of course politically, by revolt against a long-standing president who had become a dictator, Porfirio Diaz. But during the same time, obviously, international relations continued. This president had expanded his reach into Europe to have more international linkage, and the establishment of consulates had a purpose in that idea. So let's look into that, how the interest of expansion of Mexico to go out internationally to find more investment from Europe, from the United States, was reflected in more offices, more consulate. It was a difficult period, but it was understood that it was important, and that's how we get the political decision in my country to have a consulate. So in Utah, that although there was Mexicans living, working here, not at a large number, it made economic sense. It made relative opportunities for investment, for promoting closer ties. And I think that's interesting because to me it shows that two-way streets. And that's what we were looking into. It was not only Mexican interests we wanted to protect and the nationals that are living here, but we also saw the interest from government, faith-based organizations to have an office here so that we could connect and do in the many areas a consulate does. This was well received locally. You have some clippings from the Consulate Tribune and other local newspapers, and these are all accessible through the University of Utah. So these are the nice things. Most of this information, except the Utah archives, Mexican archives, sorry, you can also access them. And as a student, it's always nice when you go to the primary source and use those things. So we have, and this was a really nice thing because it's very unique. When a consul is named, he's officially named through a letter of patent, as it's called, and as you can see on your screen. And this is the the letter, the designation of the first Mexican consul in 1911. Again, remember 1910, the year that Mexican Revolution began, November 20th of 1910. So we're really close to the date. So that's also our interest to have this project during those dates. So we have the first consul being named in 1911, Jose Lozano y Castro. He was a career diplomat. He was previously in Douglas, Arizona, as a consul. And let me just point out, look who actually signed the designation. The name on top is Porfirio Diaz. He was the president, but as I said, this was the process of conflict, war, revolution. So Francisco de la Barra actually became the interim president for a period until there were free elections and Madero was, and he actually, signed it on that letter of patent. Why? Well, I'm speculating here, but he had a very first-hand knowledge of what this represented. He was the previous ambassador of Mexico in the United States, and he had been a critical person to push this. So even in a time of turmoil in my country because of the Mexican Revolution, he found the interest and the commitment to say, yeah, let's sign this, let's move this because it's important, because we've had this designation, and I think that is very interesting for the purposes of understanding the history of Mexico and the relations of Mexican government with Utah. So Lozano arrives in 1911. We have a copy of the telegram. He pretty much, as all diplomats, when we arrive, we're just trying to figure out what we're going to do, where we're going to stay, and he's sending a message to our office and say, look, I've just arrived, and please tell me where the consulate is. A previous administrative office had gone to establish an office, and it actually was at the Cullen Hotel, which is today, we believe, the Kimpton Hotel in Monaco, Kimpton Hotel Monaco, if you go downtown, 33 West, 200 South, an office there. And there's a little bit of history of the first Cullen Hotel. But it was, it's part of our mission. You arrive, you take possession formally of your office, and you start doing your work. And he was not a lot of time, less than a year, the first consul. Again, the circumstances in my country, it was a Mexican Revolution, money was not arriving on time, and there was not a lot to be done. But with the new president, in this case Francisco Madero, a new consul was named, Rafael Velarde, and we have again here the letter of patent, and he obviously was able to stay a little bit more as in his office. One of the first, and we share this because it's interesting, because it just shows the conflicts, the need of community dialogue, and also, and I must also share, it's always a mission to explain what does a consulate do, even today. To many of my persons, when I reach out, well, imagine at that time, we're talking 1912, and he was just, his new office, he was putting on the Mexican flag, and that became like a big thing at that time. People were calling the office and saying, hey, why are they doing this? That's against our country. We're being invaded. How those discourse can go. But it really became an issue, and the consul, with a very sensitive and political, he explained it on the press and said, look, this is part of our work, really, just an office, and it's with international law, you represent another country, so you have the right as an office to have your flag, as we have honored and here our flags of the countries and state. But at that time, that was difficult to understand. So it became an issue, and as a way to, mend, he actually flew the U.S. flag from his office as ceremonial and protocol sign. But again, this only shows the importance of having an office representation, the importance of sharing what we do, and the importance of, always respecting our countries and our needs. Again, the Mexican Revolution was a real challenge, and it affected all our country. Obviously, our offices abroad had to be downsized, and the consulate that had been established in 1911 formally, it really was not able to maintain itself, so it was closed down for a period of years. What happened? And this is really interesting, and I know Armando probably will develop because we've learned a lot from him. We actually had a person of Japanese origin become the Mexican consulate. In this case, the honorary consul. And this is important because it's not the same a career consul, like in my case, someone who comes from the government of that country who has an official representation, than an honorary consul. As the name says, you're becoming a semi-formal representative only at an honorary, but you still have a lot of paperwork that you can do, and that was the case of Mr. Edward Hashimoto, a businessman who had a lot of interests, obviously in the state of Utah and also in Mexico. He was a recruiter. He would be bringing Mexican workers to work at the mines and other fields. So he was important. He had a lot of connections in the state. Actually, again, the governor asked the Mexican government to become give him this designation, but it was not easy. What was happening at the time, and I think that's to me interesting, the Mexican community, which was growing, started organizing themselves. And I think this is very interesting because this dynamics between organized Mexican community, official Mexican representation, is what has grown. It's still active today and really gives a lot of dynamism to what we do. So Mexican citizens have started writing to the Mexican government saying, hey, look, we need a consul. We've got a lot of issues. Again, remember, labor issues, abuses, people who were, if they were deceased and you wanted to have paperwork help, there was no office here, and they obviously were not very happy with having a person who was not of Mexican origin, but who was also a businessman and who, like Hashimoto, and they asked specifically for a Mexican citizen and not a stranger. And there was a formal complaint from one of these organizations, and we found the paperwork in the Mexican archives saying, look, his office is actually charging us for services that should be free as Mexican citizens. Obviously, that was the last straw, and Mr. Hashimoto was taken from this designation. So what I like to point out is the dynamism of a Mexican office representation of a consulate also is closely linked to the dynamism of the Mexican community. It was the Mexican community pushing the consul, saying, hey, you need to help us. This person is in prison, and we've seen a lot of interesting paperwork there. You need to help us. They're not paying him, and he had an accident at the mines. And that's how it should be. The society organized and pushing the consulate to do more, and that's a living thing. And as a consul, I say, this is good. This is good because we're pushed to do more for our community. But even since 1920, we see organized community in many forms, and especially for what would come later as the Great Depression and all that. Something very important, again, is the faith-based organizations and their place in all this, the organization of the community. Obviously, the Lucero Ward, which was one of the first Spanish-speaking ward of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and what it represented, both as a way of organizing, promoting culture, and obviously their faith, and celebrating, obviously, our national days and our culture, and there are beautiful photos there, but also the Catholic Church, and especially with the arrival of some nuns and what was Our Lady of Guadalupe, and you can see I'm talking about Mexicans, but also think at the same time, the Greeks that were arriving here in Utah, the Italians, obviously the Irish. We would look to organize ourselves in neighborhoods, go to the faith churches that we were more comfortable. As immigrants, that's natural. It's a first step as we integrate, assimilate in another country. So this was happening here in Utah, and again, a consulate was part of this. Again, most of the more visible presence of the consulate in the Utah society would be the celebration of our independence. And there's very nice examples. And all these photos, I invite you to look them up. We're having today a photographic exhibition. You're all invited to our consulate. And this is the result of the work we've been doing. And especially I want to give a shout out to Sarai Soriano. She's been as a cultural attaché in our consulate, the person that really has done all this beautiful exhibition and selection and making. And you can come and we would welcome to share with you all of this and what it represents. So bottom line, what I wanted to share is, where do we come as an office? Well, interesting is it was more at the first stage, a request from Utah, the Utah government, as a governor, and because of the interest of economic interest of those who had businesses in Mexico. And later, and when I say later, in a couple of years, 10, naturally with our Mexican population growing, the needs and challenges as well, to what we have today. As Dr. Porter was saying, nowadays, his Latino population are 15% of the state, of which around 80% are of Mexican origin. That means 300,000 plus. And if you see that, and you go into the school district of Ogden, where 60% are of Latino Hispanic origin, it just shows how the population is growing. So I believe it's important that we know where we came from, where we are, and we as a consulate recognize and acknowledge that we have a mission that is unique here in the state of Utah, of serving our nationals, but also being that bridge as historically has been from Utah. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share. We look forward to if you're interested in learning more, there are some articles, a book from Orban, which is going to be a showcase. And obviously, there are already very interesting things written by Dr. Solórzano, Jorge Iber, and others. So we just wanted to add to this bibliography by going to the first sources in Mexico, in our historical archives, and we've got the documents, but also here, we've done a very nice partnership with Utah State Archive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Consul Borjon. Our next speaker will be Dr. Mariana Aparicio. Dr. Aparicio is Associate Professor at the Center for International Relations at the Faculty of Political and Social Sciences at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, UNAM. She received her PhD in Social Sciences from Flasco, Mexico. She is, as I said, Associate Professor at UNAM. She has been a postdoc fellow at the Center for Research on North America at UNAM. Her main lines, or main foci of research are foreign policy effects of asymmetric international trade. You can tell I'm not a political scientist because I'm tripping over the description. Trade relations and policies in the United States with Latin America, economic integration in Latin America as a development challenge, China's economic diplomacy. She's been a member of the National Researchers System, which is an important acknowledgement of academic standing since 2015. Join me in welcoming Dr. Aparicio.
Welcome. Sorry for my voice. I'm a little bit sick. Well, very honored to be here. Thank you so much, Professor Susie Porter, Council Borjon, and the opportunity to be here with you. Well, let me start to have an apologize for my English. I, I didn't speak a lot of time ago, so this is part of the pandemic thing, so I think so, maybe. Well, let me introduce this 110th anniversary of the Mexican Consulate in Salt Lake City, an opportunity for international institution academic collaboration. Okay, I will. Oh, okay. We'll talk about what it's about Orbem, because I know you are all students, right? From BA, right? Or a master degree? Okay, awesome. Well, I work every day with BA students, so it's very exciting for me to present to you this. Well, what it's the observatory? It's a multidisciplinary permanent project within the Faculty of Political Social Science at UNAM, focus on monitoring, analysis, evaluation, reflection, and generation of proposals on the binational relationships in different kind of topics, specifically, well, trade and political interest, but also with social and cultural affairs between Mexico and United States. And how was the observatory created? It was very interesting because it was created as a result of challenge of the administration of the United States in 2018 since the agenda of Donald Trump's government. So yesterday, 2 days ago, right? Trump said that he will run again from the presidency. Well, the observatory was focused on in his administration at that time. So we try to focus on regarding the relationship between the two countries facing those challenges. The observatory was created to be a space for analysis, evaluation, monitoring, reflection, and generation of public policy proposals like the influence, the development, and improvement of the bilateral relations. Right? In that sense, we study the binational relationships should not be limiting interaction between the two governments of both countries, but rather extend the plurality of actors involved in an interdependent way that require the space for dialogue and analysis in which the existence and importance of decision making and the public agenda is recognized. So, what is the observatory importance for the Faculty of Political and Social Science? Well, first of all, the history of Mexico and United States has been interviewed since the origins, like Consul Borjon always told us about, which highlights the importance of maintaining a good relationship between the two countries. Yeah, it is possible. Well, sometimes not. It's part of life. So therefore, the importance of this kind of study within the public education, like UNAM, it is the aim to analyze science and get the relation properly and with the necessary tools in order to establish a substantial dialogue and understanding. Can we provide the appropriate knowledge to direct or indirectly influence decision making at any level, providing a reliable basis to decree laws, mandates, treaties, and policies focused on welfare of the population of the two countries. What are the key points? Well, the theme. The academic study of binational relationships goes beyond the political schemes in order to offer a wider analysis and diverse perspectives. The binational relationship of both countries is crucial since the geographical proximity and historic roots have established links in every aspect of our lives, from the biggest political, diplomatic sphere, social and economic problems to day-to-day situations of the people. How we work? Well, we have a lot of things. Um, all the people that know to me, they say that I work every day, like many hours in the day. So, but in the observatory, we have a urban magazine. I will talk about more in a few seconds. Uh, we have an aesthetics workshop every year on November. Last week we have the third workshop, and we are encouraged to the students in all levels to discuss the different topics on US-Mexican relations. And also we have a podcast, Observando, and you can hear in Spotify. And we also interview politicians, diplomatics, but also the discussion between students. So if you are interested in one topic, let us know, and we can and you can be part of our podcast. So, the aim of this work is to bring the different events, current or historical, of the binational relation closer to our public through accessible language that does not neglect the technical language and the geographic presentation of the information. In addition, we support with our work to some political analysis for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And this is so interesting because all the students that are associated with the observatory are from, well, they are all students international relation in a BA position. So it's very interesting because the Mexico lawsuit ask us to help them to every day send them political analysis from to the lawsuit against gun manufacturers here in the United States. So not only discuss in a workshop, not only research about the historical relationship, also we make some political analysis from the foreign minister. And what about the associations from Orven? Well, as I said, we have students, professors, and centers. What about the students? Well, the work it's carried out mainly by these undergraduate students for the faculty, mostly international relations students, but also from political science and public administration. We call them the weirdest, yeah, because we always think about United States and Mexico relations, but they're very close, and their activities is very important for us. So from the research to create our database and the maintenance of the web page and the diffusion of the content in social networks to planification, logistic, and editorial process of the magazine, the university workshop and the podcast, most of the work is done by our research assistants, I mean, the students. And what about another associate? Well, professor from universities of public and private institutions in Mexico and also in the United States. Also, we have some diplomatics to work with us. And what about the centers? But it's something interesting because we work very close with the La Universidad de Veracruz, la Universidad Veracruzana. They have a special program of North American studies. Also with the diplomatic archive, as Professor, Consul Borjon talked about, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, but also the North America Research Center. This is a center for study North America at UNAM. And UNAM Los Angeles. As you know, La UNAM have a different like consuls, but from UNAM. And there are something in Los Angeles, Chicago, Boston, and I don't remember more, but there's more UNAM. And the purpose of this is UNAM here in the United States is to promote Spanish studies and make some understanding of the Mexican culture and so well. And the other that is so interesting is the International Studies Club, Jose Luis Bustamante Rivero. There are students that now make a think tank to study international politics, but they are on Peru. So this is so interesting. Um, Well, one of the projects that we have been working on with the Council of Mexico here in Utah was a special issue for our magazine Orbem. You can say this is the first one, yeah? Okay. This magazine arises from the collective work carried out by the observatory research team in collaboration with our associates and young research from both countries. It has the objective of sharing the international and national issues that had an impact on the binational relationship from diverse current and historical perspectives. In addition, it aims to promote academic interest in young research, like you, yeah, and increase the dissemination of important issues on the binational agenda through a platform from contemporary analysis of the relationship between Mexico and the United States. This is a four-year magazine because it's not a full academic, but the purpose is to have the opportunity for young research to publish them. And as you know, well, as you see in the down part of the magazine, we collaborate very close with the foreign minister, but also with the diplomatic archive, the historical archive. So it's not quite journal. No, it's more like foreign affairs. Have you ever read that magazine? Okay, it's more like that. Okay. Well, the contents are divided in four sections. First, the observatory team that works very hard, like 2 months, in order to have a research purpose and a specific topic. The second part, associate professor or expert. And the third and fourth, it's very important for you because one is observatory and associate young research, and the other young research. We call for papers every 2 months to send us a paper from U.S.-Mexican relation in whatever topic you want. Well, and they are part in peer review, so they have all these kind of things. And if you have very luck and a good presentation, well, they can be published. Um, how did the observatory ally with the Mexican Consulate in Salt City and the University of Utah? It's a good question. Well, in January of this year, for the celebrate the 110th anniversary of the founding of the Consulate of Mexico in Salt Lake, it was created an alliance between the Consulate, the Historical Archive, and the Center for Latin American Students here at the University of Utah with the Orbem. And we derived in a series of projects focused on the discussion of events and historical process that impact the formation of work and the consulate. Among these are some episodes of the podcast Observando and the publication of the special edition of the Orbem magazines. And also we are working on a book research that will be published from the foreign minister in Mexico. So, what is the benefit for an interinstitutional collaboration between University of Utah and UNAM? Well, we have a lot of things. I already mentioned some of them, but we are very interested to have an open conversation with the students here in the United States, with the students from Mexico. So I would like to invite you for the next workshop that it's part of the 200th anniversary of bilateral relation U.S. for Mexico. Do you know that? In the Día de la Guadalupe, December the 12th, it started the commemoration of the formal relation between Mexico and United States. So the fourth workshop from the students will be part of these commemorations that will be on November 2023, right? So. I don't know if I had enough time, but I would like to finish with another thing that maybe it will be interesting for you. What is next? One part of our collaboration with the University of Utah, it's the program Isidro Favela. And this program, it's very interesting because it's program from the historical archive to a professor here in the United States to have the support to send in the United States all the archives documents from a specific topic. So I talked with the historical archive, and other program will be open in 2023 around February or March, and maybe we have a different kind of presentation, and the students from master and the postgraduate program, they can apply for this program Isidro Falepela. This is a good opportunities. Also, I already said to you, Urban Magazine is open to send us papers, the workshop meeting from the students, and a platform of resources. Also, we would like to open the collaboration. We already start to do that with the students from from LIBA, but also with the George Washington University. We start a close collaboration to talk with the students from the Georgetown, also from students to UNAM, to talk about different topics from the U.S.-Mexican relation, because it's the only way that we can know each other and work together to have a better relation, no matter what times we are facing. So thank you so much to be here, and thank you from the council and Susie Porter to have me this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope that if anybody here of the students would like to take advantage of these opportunities, to please contact me, and I can help make those connections for you. I'd like to introduce our final speaker, Dr. Armando Solórzano, who is professor in ethnic studies and the Department of Family and Consumer Studies here at the University of Utah. His doctorate is in sociology, and he has 3 master's degrees. He has published 3 books, several book chapters, and countless articles. He has received many awards, recognitions, and nominations at the state and international level, and has had a profound impact on making visible the role and presence of Mexico and people of Mexican heritage here in the state of Utah. Thank you.
No, thank you, Susie. How much time do I have? An hour? What?
An hour and a half.
10 minutes. Terrific. Thank you. I'm very honored. I feel very honored to share this presentation. Certainly, I knew that there was not going to be time for it, but I want to start by saying and recognizing that this effort is a community effort. It's a communitarian effort. About a dozen people came and put together this publication. Which again, hopefully will be available to you in a hard copy and we can use in the classroom. There is very rich information. I don't know where to start, but again, the title of the presentation probably called your attention, because that is exactly how I feel and how the people feel about the long heritage of the Mexican-American people and Latinx in this state. Again, I will try to advance. We use that one? Terrific. What I was trying to do is to talk about Utah exceptionality. We are talking about a very different state. To a certain extent, a very different Mexican consulate that has to adapt continuously to the pressure and to the objectives coming from Mexico, the demands of the United States, and their own idiosyncrasy of Utah territory. So again, I would like to go a little bit deeper on that, if I can, but I think it might be on a different occasion. And which one is the key? That's that one. Then I will try to cover a little bit when Utah was an indigenous territory, because this is the question that people ask me the most. I'm go back 5,000 years before the coming of the settlers, even before Christ's time. And people challenge me, how far are you going to go? My answer is, as far as my memory can reach. And that's, again, there is a fascinating work that is called The Danger of the Indigenous Memory. Because again, our memory doesn't go only with the people. Our memory goes with the land. We are the people of the land. I'm so proud to carry my second name, Solórzano, which means citizen of the sun. I don't belong here. I'm just one of those immigrants. And the reason is to dismantle the myth that this state started in 1847. Our present has been so long, and what I'm trying to do is to recreate the collective memory, the memory of the people. Because as we have heard, this history, and as I will try to elaborate a little bit more, is the history of all. All are just one. And this has been the message of the Mexican people, the Mexican Americans and Latinos as mestizo people. That's why, again, we continue promoting, and thanks to the Mexican Consulate, and we keep repeating, we are not here to build borders. We are here to build bridges. We never came to America. America came to us. And it's our responsibility, it's our mission to carry a goal in one of the richest and most powerful countries in the nation. And it's a task that the Mexican Consulate, the University of Utah, Mexican people, Mexican Americans, we take it. And we are not afraid of carry this mission in this place. When Utah was Spain, there is such a rich history here that I wish to share. And then I was thinking about when Utah was Mexico. And again, this is something that is very hard for our students to understand, the issue of borders, the issue of dividers. We as people are not used to borders. As we call it, the Great Spirit, as they call the indigenous people, never create borders. Borders are social creations. It's something that we do to separate people. So when you talk to Mexicans and you call them immigrants, they don't understand what you're talking about. And that will be my final point in my presentation, right? What do you mean immigrants? Again, we never came here. And when people say, hey, Mexicans, go home, where do you want us to go? This is our land. This is the land of my ancestors. This is where my ancestors work, where my ancestors die. We are here, and we're going to be here because we don't have any place to go. This is the place to fulfill our mission. And this is the message that we try to do with all our research and the ultimate meaning of our work. Unity, coming together as people. Utah is still indigenous, Mexico, Chicano, Latinos, whatever you want to call us, right? But at the bottom, we are the people of the earth, right? That's why we celebrate, again, I'm sorry, I'm going to be taking several detours. That's why we celebrate 2 weeks ago, the Day of the Dead. Because we are the only one, the Mexicans, that talk about live and dying. And we are recognized internationally. 1982, the United Nations recognized our celebration as an inheritance to humanity. So therefore, when we run into stereotypes in this nation, I don't know what are you talking about. Can we talk? Can we enter into the dialogue? And this research, this seminar, this conference is a very serious, strong attempt. That's why we always ask, how much time do I have? Can you hear my story? We do have a message. How long can I have for that? And today, again, Mexican immigrants are tomorrow's Utah citizens. That's when you saw the first image when we started this presentation. Such a beautiful image that is challenged. When I presented again, probably is my most famous picture, and people say, she's not an American. She's not an image of America. I said, well, which America do you have in mind? America is a rich country made by many people. Utah exceptionality, again, I will try to get at least to 3 or 4 slides. Why we are so different? Because Utah was the last state explored by Spaniards. What does that mean? That the colonization was not ended. We don't have missions like in California. We don't have a very strong representation of Spain, because at that time it was just too weak to defend the territory. And Utah was the only state that was not colonized by Spaniards. That's what it makes it so difficult to enter into a dialogue with people who colonized the states who did not want to mix. And that is the big difference. They want to maintain the purity of the blood, while the Spaniard mix. And as a result, look at me, a mestizo people, brown, beautiful, because the combination of cultures, destinies, putting together. But that doesn't happen in Utah, and that's why we need to use a different language, a language that touches not your mind, but your heart, in this coming together. So the other exceptionality is they claim the scarcity of Mexican population in the area. I don't trust the statistics. I know, Professor Porter, you mentioned that in the census of 2020, there were about 500 Mexicans. We know that in 1911, 2,000 Mexicans came to work in the mines. The issue, again, is how do we count? Who is a Mexican in Utah? And that is one of the beginning of a new conversation, because we were not considered Mexicans, we were considered Indians, because there were only 3 races in Utah. Mexican was none of them, was Indian, because we were subsumed under the whole ideology of Lemonites. Right? So again, the reconsideration, not of us or who we are. We know who we are. We know our place of history. We know that my Aztec, Maya, Inca civilization was just curtailed, interrupted, but our civilization continues. And that's why I'm so skeptical that even when I go to the parent-teachers conference, the teacher said, I'm very proud because your brown son knows a lot of mathematics. I say, what are you talking about? Oh, he's very good at mathematics. He has to be good. He is descended from the Aztecs. And the Aztec was the only civilization in the world who created 0. Through mathematics, create the Great Pyramids. Teacher, are you telling me that my child is good for mathematics? Let me ask you a question, but I will not tell you the question because, again, I will never finish. So to us, to me, is not how many, but the quality of the people who are here. And we see in this presentation, people with a commitment, with Professor Porter that doesn't need to be with us, but she is with us, assuming, identifying, helping us to carry our mission. With Mr. Consul, he doesn't need to do all this. So it's not quantity, but the quality of the people in Utah. And that's what distinguishes us. And the overwhelming presence of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. It has been fundamental in shaping our history and in shaping the history of the Consulate. Again, unfortunately, I don't have the time to tell you whole story, but you know, when Utah was integrated into the United States, Brigham Young didn't want to do anything with the Mexicans. So it's not that we don't want to, it's that we're not allowed. Because immediately he declared, and again, I'm doing this because I know I don't have the time, right? But you know, for Mexicans, we don't have money, but we have time. That's only what matters to us, right? So he said, no, the territory belongs to the Indians. I don't want to deal with the Mexicans. It took us out of the conversation. How can we establish the validity of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, who in chapter 3 said, even if the state now belongs to the United States, the land belongs to the Mexicans. But if we are denying the conversation in the presence of Mexican government representatives and diplomats, we don't have the right to, we don't have the opportunity to defend our people and to defend something that is sacred, the land. And for us, it doesn't mean private property. The land is the sense of my identity, of who I am. I am the land, I am the environment. And that's what, again, our message when we see all these organizations or environmental movements. And they say, oh, this is something new. We have done for 5,000 years. We have been told you, if you destroy the environment, you destroy yourself. How are we going to tell it? Through our identity. You curtail us from the land, you curtail who I am. In my tradition, in my family, in my indigenous side of the family, because again, my father was a native Indian, but my mother was French. So I have to live what we call in between, meaning we are a new way of being a human. We cannot be defined just by Western ways of looking who is a human. Because in those terms, only those who have rationality. But what about the other dimensions of the human being? So it's in this definition, again, that we are in continuous communication. And I appreciate all the efforts of our council to enter in conversations with members of the LDS faith. It's admirable. Because with time, we can get there together. But as it is, then we need to reaffirm who we are. Along, again, they talk already about language, right? And for 5,000 years, before the settlers, we have been spoken what is called the Ute Aztec language. Why is important? Because language is an essential component of the Mexican-American Latinas identity. Okay? It's not an accidental. We are made out of words according to our mythologies. That's why some Mexican and Mexican-Americans said, we might give you the Southwest, but we are not going to give you your language. You give your language, you give your identity. It's an essential component of who we are. And you say, which language? We are polyglots, right? We speak Spanish. After 600 years of colonization, I'm talking to you in English. And I go to my home, I have to speak Nahuatl. And when these things coming of people from Oaxaca to Jalisco, I need to learn how to speak Zapotec. What language? The universal language of people coming together. And that is the language we publish. That's what I'm so proud of this university that is supporting the speaking of Nahuatl. It's the reestablishment of our connection. And I don't accept the criticism of my brothers and sisters who said that we are losing our culture, tradition, and heritage in our state. I don't understand. What I see, again, is the rebirth of our indigeneity, of our identity. Listen, 99% of people in the United States eat tortillas and salsa. We destroy the French bread. We destroy the French, we defeat it. We defeated the French in Mexico, and that's what you will celebrate on Cinco de Mayo. Isn't that true? And with the French in the United States in their own territory. It's the power of the people. It's the power of a tradition that has human roots. And that is the beauty. Of course, you know, and as a joke, remembering that my mother was French, she will never admit every time I say, Mom, I'm going to be celebrating Cinco de Mayo. You celebrate Cinco de Mayo, no inheritance for you. No, Mom, we never defeat the French. They never come to Mexico, neither the Austrian. No, nobody came, Mom. We are in good shape, but just firm that document, sign that document. I want the inheritance. So again, we are talking about, again, this train of language that unite. Did you see that? Did you see that in the map? All the way from, again, the state that now extend beyond Wyoming, all the way to Central America. One language, right? That's, again, when I came to Utah 30-something years ago, and that's my age, I spent the first 2 months with the youths. And the first question they asked me, because you know they are a sovereign nation, you need a passport or permission to get in there. When I go there, the first question they asked me, are you an Aztec? I said, yes, bro. You're in, right? So, but this is your language. Can we talk the same language? And again, is again the foundation, and that is reflected in the cultural activities of the Mexican consulate. And I do appreciate that, right? Speak the language, be proud of the language. Yes, you can say that is the language of the colonizer, that the Spaniard, but guess what? We syncretize it. We combine it with our language. And out of that, emerge a new language. It's what we do in the United States, right? You want me to speak in English or in Spanish? Please do it in Spanglish. Okay, I'm going to repair el rufo. It's the adaptation of a language that, again, we're not going to give it to you. Okay? To give my language is to give myself. To give myself is to get lost, to lose my identity. And if I lose my identity, I'm nobody. I know who I am. I am the son of the sun. And I'm the daughter of Mother Earth. And that is the message. Tracing history, again, because that's what we are looking for. What we're not doing here very fast, mainly what I'm saying here, you see the symbol on your, for you it's on your right. That is the symbol the symbol of the goddesses Zeus, which is the goddess of fertility. Huh? That symbol later in some states like Arizona became Cocopelli, right, Susan? That's how they call it, Cocopelli. Cocopelli, the god of fertility, because that's what is important for us. Mexican American Latinos are about life. When there is life, is beauty. When there is beauty, is the great spirit. So again, this hieroglyph that you can find in Thompson, Utah, right? When you go to Moab, You know, there is a detour. You go to the right, Moab, and to the left, you go Thompson. You just ride 5-7 minutes, and you find the relief. Why is that important? Because that symbol is in the external symbol of the Aztec calendar. Huh? Which for me means that the Aztecs in their pilgrimage to Tenochtitlan, which happened about 575 years, they start building the Aztec calendar here in Utah. Okay. This, again, connection. And we do these connections not to claim that this is ours. The Great Spirit don't give us the air to possess it. He gave it us to share it, right? And we are not claiming ownership. We are claiming inclusion. Hear my story. Accept that we build this together. And the best is just to come. That's what we tell them all the time, and it's true. We will faithful to our promises. In the issue of the Dominguez Escalante, I read the whole diary differently. I look at the contributions of the Mexican, of the indigenous people. Why? Because history has told us that if we don't do that, we replicate what is called the fantasy heritage. Yeah, you hear all the time Dominguez and Escalante, which, by the way, in 5 years is going to be the 120th anniversary. And for those of you who are interested, the federal government is going to give us several millions of dollars to talk and to write about it. So again, if you are interested, please come join us. It will be wonderful. So again, I read it differently because Dominguez y Escalante mainly just ride the horses. But the one who keep them, the one who talk the language, the one who guide them, the one who tell them how to keep exploring, were these Mexican Indians. And again, the credit should be also with them. And also, this is fascinating, the doctrine of discovery, which is the official doctrine on which the state of Utah was granted. And you say, oh, well, that's history, his 17th century document. No, in 1992, which is again fascinating for me to share with you, some Mexicans of French descent were claiming that Ogden belongs to them, right? But they cannot do it. Well, I think the judge decided, no, look at the doctrine of discovery. That the Pope, to Christianity, the whole mission, yeah, we'll talk later about that. They said that the land that the Spaniards discovered belonged to the Spaniards, not to the Mexicans. So now there is a very strong movement of indigenous people trying to talk to Pope Francis, say, can you eliminate that doctrine, right? And open the whole territory for all of us. And we are not saying, we are not claiming property. No. The Great Spirit doesn't give us the land to own it. Again, and I repeat because it's worth to repeat. He gives it to us to share to all these resources. Susie, you stop me whenever you want because I keep talking, okay? So what is fascinating for me is that a passion. I mean, I'm sorry, I do have a passion because that is the only way we are going to change history. Your numbers, your statistics is not going to move you, but the passion behind the message. What is fascinating to me is that in terms of the land, what happened after the coming of the settlers, everything was changed, okay? Look at, and again, I read, this is coming from the diary of Dominguez and Escalante, okay? And I have read it like in 3 different versions. Look at your column on the left. Those are the names that the Spaniards, Dominguez Escalante, plus the Mexicans, who know the language, gave to the places in Utah when they entering, right? If you look at the name, the majority of them has to do with the Catholic tradition, with saints, okay? Look at, for instance, the first one, La Laguna de Timpanogo, de Buenaventura, el Río de San Damián, el Valle de la Purísima. all those are names of saints and celebrations within the Catholic tradition. When the sailors came, or brothers and sisters of the LDS religion, they changed everything. Now and you can just go over, right? And you call them on. Yeah, you stop me again, because if you don't take the microphone out of me. We need to wrap it up. Ooh. I'm going to say. It's not my pleasure to curtail passion. I'm going to bring something that Mr. Consul referred to, just to see how we can open. This is fascinating. This is extraordinary. But something that is really touched my research spirit, and I'm doing research differently. No, that is fascinating, exciting. Oh, this is even more. Oh, this is. But I want to get to this point. Fast. Okay. Mr. Consul talked about Hashimoto, Edgar Hashimoto, okay, as the first honorarian consul. Fascinating story. And I'm following very close for what I have read and what I have talked. After that, remember, this is an excellent citation from a book that's called Y no se lo tragó la tierra, okay? That in Utah, you know, when the migrant workers are coming, I read the conclusion. It's a dialogue between compadres. Where is Utah? And one of them said, I don't know, but I think it's in Japan. That's how well known, right? And what they are doing here is translating the experience of the first honorary consul, right? Where is the Mexican consul? From Japan. Oh, Japan might be in Mexico. It's rational, right? What is fascinating for me, and again, Susie, just give me 1 minute, is the strong connection, which is another book. I think you should be a scholar, Mr. Consul. The strong connection between Mexicans, Japanese, and Japanese Americans, a connection that you never tried. How did this happen? They already, Professor Porter and Mr. Consul talk about how the Mexicans were miners, railroad workers. Guess what? The Mexicans walk together with the Japanese. They established pretty strong relationship. The heartbreaking story comes when the Mexican national enrolled in the U.S. Army and went to fight to Japan. Guess what they did? It's heartbreaking. In a war, you know what a war is for, either to kill or to be killed, unfortunately. And these Mexicans from Utah who worked together with the Japanese had to do in Japan what they had to do. What do you think the feeling was when they came back? Huh? It's a heartbreaking story. And all this, again, is an oral historian's interview. And the situation gets even worse when in Utah we create the internment camp. You know what I'm talking about, Topaz, right? You hear about Topaz, right? Have you? No, they even learn in class. This is the University of Utah. Come on, you guys. In the World War II, there were, at that time, they were called concentration camps where the Japanese Americans were put during the war. Topaz was one of those internment camps here in Utah, okay? There were about, I believe, 8,000 Japanese. Well, in those concentration camps, the workers, the ones who produce the food and keep the camp clean and organized, were Mexicans. They worked together. It's a story that needs to be told. And this, again, is a demonstration of this spirit of Mexican people who historically, as indigenous people, and then as mestizo people, we feel that we are called to do. And we are going to do it, and step by step, we are reaching all groups, all people, and people from different walks of life. I'm sorry I cannot tell you the whole story, but Professor Porter is guilty of that. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I encourage you to look for Professor Solorzano's classes so that you can learn the full story. Thank you for staying with us for this conversation, and I wish you all a wonderful afternoon.